They time it. They immaculately time it.
They
It
know
says it's
exactly what
live.
they're gonna do.
Is it live for you?
We're live now, so we're watching your cat, yeah. Hopefully.
Oh, the cat's buggered off already. It's gone. It's gone. That's it. It's just me. Happy Sunday.
So everyone's come up. I think everyone is working. Everyone tell me in the comments if it's all working out okay. I know Johnny looks a bit frozen on the screen, but I think he's sorting out some stuff in the background. Oh, there he goes. He's back again now.
I watched Frozen 2 the other day. Bloody hell, that's time I won't get back.
That's true. Oh. I seen that the other day as well. It was just crazy stupid. Yeah, I know. My kids are.
Even my daughter, halfway through it, who's she's going to be 11 this year. She just looked at me and went, "I'm not sure about Frozen 2." And I went, "No, that's why I'm going to go on eBay right now."
It's one of those franchises that should have been left at the one. It was fine with just Frozen on its own. Frozen 2 makes no sense.
No, the best part about Frozen is John Travolta introducing the woman's name who sang the song. It's still one of the funniest things I've ever seen on the internet. Oh my gosh. It's still the funniest thing. It's funnier than everything else. He just does a massive intro. You've probably seen it. He does this massive intro, and then just at the critical moment, that split second, totally forgets her name and just says what he thinks her name is, and that's not it. It's just brilliant.
Just wing it. Just wing it. Someone's going in his ear.
Honestly, if you're having a rubbish time, or you're having 5 minutes of just feeling all rotten, just find that clip on YouTube and play it yourself, because it'll make you howl. I'm chuckling. I haven't seen it for weeks. I'm gonna have to watch it again later today.
It's nearly in good as memory. We have hundreds of people out to join us. So thank you very much for everybody joining. Please click the share button, because when you click the share button or the like button, then YouTube goes, "Yeah, thanks. These lads are doing something nice." Do that.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us on Bob's Sunday service. And thanks for having me.
No problem. Anytime. You want to come
over? Say that.
Come over to Ireland when this is all over. We'll go for a drive.
Oh, blimey. You know about my embarrassing island story, don't you?
Yeah. Some of the lads here won't know.
Yeah.
Let them know.
Oh, well, it's not a very long story. The story is I've never been to Ireland, and that's really embarrassing for me. And I haven't got a good reason why I haven't. But what's even more frustrating is this year, the start of this year, one of my New Year's resolutions was I'm going to Ireland. I'm going to go to Ireland. I'm going to do a couple of features there that I've been meaning to do for ages. And I organised them. And I was supposed to be in Ireland in about, 3 weeks' time or something daft. And obviously that's not going to happen. So, yeah.
So you caused coronavirus is what you're telling us. That was your ruse for not wanting to come to Ireland, was like, let's just have a little breakout pandemic. I wanted to go to Ireland, that'd be fine.
I've got lots of good reasons to come to Ireland, obviously, but I'm actually going to do it and do some cool episodes, film some stuff, actually see Ireland, So that's going to have to be postponed.
I've been in England a few times. I've been, there's a few car launches I went to, mostly down sort of Cotswolds area where they normally pick for the car launches. So you drive through the nice little twee cottages and all that. But we went to Manchester once.
Yeah.
The bits and pieces up there as well. It's very, very industrial end of the city. Never really been. I've been to London years ago, but nothing to do with cars.
Well, I go to London probably every 2 weeks, and I've lived in London twice, and it's okay. It's great for car spotting. It's not great for driving. In fact, it's joyless for driving.
Yeah, you do see a lot of V8s, a lot of Aston Martins and things hovering around London for no apparent reason.
Oh yeah. There's loads of supercars and there's loads of weird exotic classics that you just think, who on earth owns this car and parks it on the street?
Just leave it there.
What's that all about?
Where did your love of cars come? Did you inherit your love of cars from dad or mom or brother or sister or uncle, aunt? What was it? Or you just out of the box, I just love cars?
I didn't inherit it in that my parents have never owned a nice car. That's the irony of all of this. Never owned a sports car. But I guess I got my car interest from my dad, in so much as and this story I've told loads of times probably, but I think it's because mum and dad always owned an old car, an obsolete car. And of course, this is pre-internet, when getting parts just involved phoning around and stuff like that. So my mum and dad bought a brand new car in 1976, had my brother as the first child in 77, and had me in 79. And we had that same car until 1999. Yeah,
Good
1999. Run. So, and I learned to drive in that car. So that car, the Hillman Avenger Estate, was the car that I got taken home from hospital in. I learned to drive in it, went to primary school in it. I mean, loads of stuff happened to that car, but that car was always needing attention. And my dad frequently was on the drive under it, tinkering with it. And my brother used to help him do a lot of the work on the car. And as a consequence, I think that's why my brother became an engineer, and my dad was an engineer. So my brother's more hands-on than me. I was more about driving, wanting to tinker and drive. I was interested in design and the history of cars. So I think that's what happened. It was the combination of that and being interested in watching cars and films and TV.
Yes.
I was always into that.
The 70s and 80s were brilliant for television. Cars, hero cars, massive cars. They were the stars in their own right. They were the stars of the show. And some of them actually still are stars. If you look at things like Knight Rider, that car still tours the planet.
I mean, that's the thing. It was a golden era, I think, for TV cars and movie cars. The 80s was massive. I mean, I remember being so excited at Knight Rider and Dukes of Hazzard and A-Team. I mean, A-Team building stuff in their sheds and smashing out through the doors of the shed with a tank, and doing pointless burnouts in the A-Team van. It was all great, and so I think that must have had a profound effect on me. And I kind of like the fact that I grew up pre-internet and then saw the internet coming, and then I was already doing. I was doing my first job when the internet, I suppose, became a force to be reckoned with, a platform that was going to dominate. So, and also digital photos as well. When I first started my journalist job, we didn't have digital photos. We still had slides. We shot on slide and then we scanned them in. So I've seen that massive swing of the needle, and it's quite exciting to try and kind of. And we're still in a big shift now, aren't we? I suppose. So it's trying to keep up with it and work out how useful it is to you.
And I think it's going to swing again. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, to swing around towards whether we go completely digital, whether, like those international trips we're all doing, which give us the first glimpse of everything, but that's kind of gone effectively until this kind of settles down a bit. So I'd love to see where it's going to land. It's going to be a really interesting few months, maybe even a few years, actually, before we actually figure out what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I think it will do. I reckon at the moment we're in a world where the bubble of influencers and we're not just talking YouTube, we're talking social media like Instagram. That bubble hasn't burst, because I don't think it will necessarily burst. But my wife, who's a marketing and brand manager, she's very kind of brutal with stuff like that. Brutally honest. She thinks that the people that aren't a specialist in anything, who are just famous for fame, those I think you're going to see those people maybe fall by the wayside, because when you're stripped of everything, what are you left with? If I stripped you of everything, you'd still have the knowledge of your specialist background. If you don't have a specialist background in anything, or where do you go? What do you do? It's that whole thing of in fact, one of my kids this morning told me they decided they want to be a YouTuber, and I said, well, okay, there are connotations to that, good and bad, but I said, don't, for goodness sake, you got to be good at something. You got to have a specialism, a passion, because otherwise you're just craving fame for the sake of being famous, and that's just a bit sad, I think.
It is. I don't know if it's got a
It's a bit tragic.
you kind of can't sell yourself constantly. Eventually you're sold out. This even happens to big movie stars. There comes a point where nobody casts them in films anymore because they're just either too old or they're not big out there and they're in the wrong market or whatever. So it's difficult unless you do what you do and what I do, which is specialize in cars. So even if YouTube closed in the morning, we'd probably try and sell our wares back to print or in blog form or something else rather than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting to keep a bit of everything spinning. You know, I still do some writing on a few magazines, and I still do blogs here and there. So it's just interesting to see, and also right now in lockdown, how diverse people have suddenly become.
Yeah,
it's that whole thing of you're forced into being diverse again. So you go, well, what can I do? What can I achieve with my garden, my garage, my shitty spare room, this office thing, which is an absolute mess. I'm only showing you this section. I'm not showing you that bit over there because it's appalling. My wife was like, please don't show the world that. It's just a terrible place. I'm like, well, yeah.
We just made up a corner of my kitchen, which actually has your name on it back here. With Jonny Smith, Carpervert.
I saw that.
My wife.
That's brilliant.
We did it we tried to do it for every guest now, which is the thing. So it's on the background here for the whole time. But you have to kind of make things up. And I watched your video on your Beetle. I actually watched it last night for the second time. I watched it because there's a level of passion you have in that film that you've made by yourself. Obviously, you've made it by yourself, and you're trying to set cameras as well as figure out actually how to fix the car and give us a background on the car. So it's one of those films that actually comes across being probably the best thing that you've made because you had to make it. Would you think that?
Well, thank you. I mean, I've got to be honest, Bob. I found it really difficult to set up two cameras, make sure that you can hear me, and so get the shots you need, but also actually mend the car and do the job and not talk total gibberish. And it really wrecked my head. And I'm trying to do another one. I shot another one a couple of days ago, not on the Beetle, but on our Jimny. And I find it quite stressful. Self-filming is quite liberating, but depending on what bar you set for yourself, it's actually quite stressful. Yeah. And the Beetle was always going to be quite sentimental. I've really been quite overwhelmed by how much of a chord it struck with people. I mean, the viewings wise, it's doing okay, but the amount of comments have exceeded most other videos, and that people have really they have a thing to say. They remember their own first car, or they remember Beatles in their life in some way, good or bad. And I think it's just been really lovely to hear all those stories. You know, there's so much to come out of that, and I'm trying to work out how to do episode 2 as soon as possible. I've got to get some brake parts and some exhaust parts. And
that's the problem. You can't get the stuff online. You see, when the online doesn't work for some things like secondhand stuff, or going to a car breaker's yard and having a route about inside things, see if you can find stuff. So it's nearly impossible to get stuff you're looking for. My first car was actually a Datsun Nissan Cherry. It was £100. It was a canary yellow, really, like, this is bad taste stuff, but it was all I could afford at the time. It was taxed as a 1.3, which is what it originally came with, but it was actually 1.6 engine under the bonnet that no one talked about. And so it was a crazy. That would have
been quite quick. Was that so? That was 70s Cherry.
Yeah, 70s Cherry, but registered in the 80s. Yeah. It was just when Nissan was buying out the last bits of Datsun, and they must have done some deal. Yeah. Some of the cars came with Datsun Nissan, some of them came with Nissan Datsun, and then Datsun disappeared after.
I remember one of my neighbours had one. Yeah, one of my neighbours had one, and it was badged Datsun. It was badged Datsun, and it had Nissan mud flaps, and then it had a little a sticker on the back window saying, I don't know, Nissan and Datsun, some sort of flag. And I remember just being totally confused as a kid, going, "Well, what is it then? Is it Nissan? Is it Datsun? What's going on?"
Yeah, sometimes.
Cool cars though.
Yeah, it was a great car. It was a good handling yoke, and it sounded brilliant because there's a great big hole in the exhaust just before the back silencer. So it sounded like a rally car when it was only like doing 5 miles an hour. But just drive everywhere in second, pretty much. I was crap. I broke everything in the car, and eventually it got crashed into by a milk float. Now, not a milk float like a battery milk float, but a milk float. It was a high
You
ace.
got crashed into.
Yeah, I was crashed into a car. I was trying to turn right at a junction and a milk float. A guy was looking, the milkman was driving and looking to his left, and he just ran up the rear end of my car and made bits with milk everywhere.
I love that story. If you haven't done a video on that story, have you got any photos of the cherry in question?
I have one, I think, and I can't find it because you know in this lockdown point where you're rooting around inside rooms and things trying to find stuff, and I came across some more pictures of me in Braveheart and stuff from the 80s, but I couldn't find any pictures of that bloody car.
You got to find it. I've been digging through. I've got a couple of shoeboxes of all my print photos, and I've been digging through some of those because all you need sometimes is one photo, and there's dozens of memories and stories off the back of that one picture, isn't there? So
yeah, it's like from your Beetle video. There's a photograph you show in the middle of that has the Beetle is missing its doors. The doors are gone off, and the front is gone. Everything's gone off. And what prompted that picture? Why was that picture taken? I know you like why you were taking the doors off, obviously to fix things up. But what was the picture about?
Yeah. Well, what I did is I wanted to make sure I bought the car before I passed my test because I knew we'd have to do some work to whatever I bought to make it right. Yeah. So when we bought the car, I think it was right at the end of 1995, we bought the car. Or right at the beginning of 96. But the doors, the outer skins of the doors were rotten. So they were flapping a bit. When you shut the door, it sort of clapped. So that it wasn't structural rust, but it was, I remember you slammed the door on it. But
round of applause for
my dad said, my dad said, well, let's take the doors off. And my friend who had a welder said, well, I'll put a new skin on them and they'll be good for a couple of years. And I didn't have enough money to pay him, so I remember this, I swapped a pair of secondhand Alfa Romeo Delorto carbs for him to do all the work on the doors.
Nice.
So he did, the doors were over at his place, he did the new skin, bit of filler, and tried to paint match the lower half of the doors, while me and my dad covered the car up on the drive with the tarpaulin, and then used to uncover it to do what we did. And there were a couple of bubbles on the rear wings, and we painted the rear valance really badly. I remember that. And we put I think we needed a new exhaust, which wasn't very expensive back then. It was just a fiddle. And then there was a few little other jobs which needed doing. I think there was something going on with the wiring. And in fact, I looked through the service history a couple of days ago for the first time in, 20 years. And weirdly, I found the company who must have done loads of work to the car in the 80s. And I emailed the company because it still exists in Plymouth. And the guy phoned me, who is retired now, but he still owns the company. And we talked, he said, I remember that car. I remember it. Is it still going? I said, yeah. It's still bloody going. And he put a short engine in it in 1986 and he repainted it in 1983. I've got all the receipts. And he was like, blimey, I can't believe it's still going. So, basically that was DIY driveway car fiddling, which I'm sure you and a lot of people watching this have done over the years. It's a rite of passage. You can't afford to do it. So you just got to try and do it. Yeah,
I know people have used hammerite on the paintwork of a car to try and get it back to normal. Paint over the rust bits, but obviously it cures rust. Hammerite. I think everybody in the 80s had a go with a spanner. You had to have, because either you knew somebody who knew a little bit about cars and you'd both have a go, or you just couldn't afford to do anything with the car. So if it broke down, you had to fix it.
Yeah, and what I like about that is you learn about the car, so your relationship with the car is cemented a bit more. So even if the car's a complete shitbox, you understand it a bit more, which means you're probably less scared to tackle a job on it when another job comes around, which inevitably it will. So like you with your rusty Cherry, I'm sure you did dozens of jobs on that because bits came off it, and you hadn't bought the best car because you probably couldn't afford the best car. So that's just the way it is.
I still remember changing
I
the
love all
wipers, and they went over the bonnet when I was driving along. So I put them on, I put them on upside down. So as I'm driving along, it starts to rain, and the first wipe, they're gone over the top of the roof onto the road behind me. So I had to pull over and get out and walk back the big miserable walk to try and find the wipers in the ditch. So that was another moment of having to learn how to change windscreen wipers. A question from the comment. There's millions of comments, so I don't know if I'm going to get to everybody's questions today because there's just so many comments at the moment. Peter asks, "Hi Bob and Johnny, hope you're both well. My friend is looking for an electric car. His Volvo V40 has backed up after 20 years. So what kind of, at the moment, I know you have an e-Soul, and it's actually my favorite electric car as well at the moment, but is there anything that you'd wait for? Is there something else that's on the way that's coming electrically that you might be interested in waiting for?"
Well, I mean, a lot of people are talking about the VW ID3, which, well, the launch of that was going to be imminent, wasn't it? The global launch, which I think they're still producing them. They closed production, and I think as of about 48 hours ago, production has started again, but at a much slower rate. So that being their kind of global new hope of ground up EV, it's got to be something that everybody's going to take notice of, because a lot is resting on that car to be successful for VW.
And it's VW. I mean, VW always get the headlines, don't they? As soon as they produce anything, everybody talks about a VW. So it's got that on its side before it ever begins.
Yeah, and it's the first car to have that all new EV chassis. So even if the ID3 doesn't float your boat, that what the other IDs, one of them is going to. And the ID Buzz for me is, of course, the one that I'm really looking forward to. But that's not till like the end of next year, so you've got to get that for the time being. So I think that's really cool. I think the new Zoe, the 52 kilowatt hour Zoe, is quietly doing good things. It's weird, isn't it, that Renault have pushed zero emission for years, and they don't seem to get as much appreciation as maybe what they're due. So I think that's a cool car to bear in mind. And the other cars that I'm looking forward to are not cars, they're actually vans. I know it's not relevant to the person that asked the question, but this year is supposed to be the year of the EV van, or the EV electric van. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot of pure EV vans, because I think they're going to make a bigger difference than cars. A lot of short journey deliveries, a lot of tradespeople that work in one town or one city. I think that's going to be really exciting to see how they take off.
Do you think EVs are going to save petrol cars, diesel cars, V8s, V12s? Do you think they'll be saved by the advent of an electric car being there now to do the commute every day?
I think that, people ask me this a lot at the moment. I think, are they going to be the savior of it? Are they going to kill it? Well, I think EVs are going to kill the average car, the average piston car that maybe isn't interesting. And that's not necessarily, well, I don't see that as a bad thing. But I think it will be the savior of the interesting piston car. And when I say interesting, whether that's, like you say, a V12 or something like that, what it means is those cars will be revered and preserved, and they'll be used for special occasion. And obviously that special occasion, your window might shrink because of the government's stopping you from using it. But let's say you had a V12 in your garage today. You're realistically, unless I'm wrong, Bob, you wouldn't use that car on a daily basis,
no.
Right? Because you'd be stupid or broke or whatever, So although fuel has come down to, I drove past the fuel station yesterday, and it's £1.06 a litre. That's like the cheapest it's been in years.
Yeah, same here.
But nobody's buying fuel, obviously, because nobody's going anywhere. So, and I was in my EV when I drove past the fuel station. I was like, oh, that's great, fuel's cheap. I don't need it.
Look, petrol's cheaper.
So,
Woohoo! Deadly, keep going.
it's like, yeah, I need a gallon for the mower, and that's as far as at the moment. But yeah, I actually, I've said this for a couple of years, and I firmly believe that this is not a tribal thing. If you're interested in EVs and you drive an EV or you buy one, it doesn't mean you have to give up the other completely. I think it's just a shift in usage and behavior. And I personally, for a long time, I've used the EV as my daily vehicle, so that my classics, or a big engine thing can be used here and there as a treat. And that's the way I think. That's the way I do it in my head. That's my yin and yang, really.
Plus, I like the smell of petrol. I just like that smell of a car that started. You were talking about the smell of the Beetle in your Beetle video as well. There's a smell attached to old classic cars that if you have, no matter whose it is, if I jumped into your Beetle, I go, wow, the smell of this. It's meaningless to me, but there's a certain scent that goes with that kind of car.
Yeah, I mean, I like the smell of petrol. That's the weird thing. I bought a gallon of fuel. It was before lockdown, actually, when I still had the e-Golf. And like a complete idiot, I didn't screw the top on properly of the spare can, and it dripped over the edge. Not much, but you don't need much with petrol, do you? Onto the boot carpet. My daughter got in the car a couple of days later, and she went, "Oh, Daddy, this car smells amazing." And I was like, yeah, here's the irony. I'm driving an electric car that reeks of unleaded. I mean, it reeked. I had to leave it with the windows down on the drive for a whole day just to try and get the stink out.
At least it's not diesel. Diesel never evaporates. Petrol evaporates eventually, but diesel just sits there as a big scum forever.
Yeah.
We have a diesel. Carmaca here has bought a question. He's paid €5 by Super Chat to ask this question. Amazing, lads. I think about the Sandero videos you did. That I think that'll be the type of car for the post-corona future, or will electric get stronger? I'm not sure this is a good or bad question, because I'm not sure you'll know the answers, because we don't know what's going to happen at the end of this corona thing.
The thing about the Sandero is that it's a really utilitarian, simple budget car, right? It uses older generation Renault bits, and it's one of those cars where if you want to buy a new car, you just want pure value, and the components are proven. They've paid for their R&D. They're proven that in other Renaults of a bygone era, and I think that's why Dacia does so well, because it's just a super simple car brand. I've heard that Dacia are bringing an electric car out, I guess using older Zoe running gear, which is going to be phenomenal, because I mean that could be the true people's car EV. So yeah, I mean, I think Dacia, there's a reason why Dacia sales have just soared in the last 5 years, because there's a market for somebody that definitely wants a brand new car with a warranty, but just wants something quite simple and ultra good value. That's what I mean. A base model Duster, I love them.
Yeah. Especially if you're coming out of something that's 10 years old, 12-year-old car, and you're getting into a new Sandero, new Dacia, anything, it feels new. It feels like you're getting out, because 10 years old feels wrecked compared to getting into a brand new car. So if you're not used to trading from car to car, Dacia's a really good, genuine value option.
Yeah. The other thing about Dacia is, because they're quite old tech, if you wanted to, I'm not saying you would, you've got a chance of being able to maintain it yourself.
Yeah.
You bought a Dacia brand new and you wanted to change the oil and do the discs and pads yourself, you just could.
Yeah, and it's something I preach here every single week when someone asks a really blatantly obvious question about getting something fixed on their car. I go, why don't you just do it yourself? Change the spark plugs. It's probably the simplest thing you can do on a modern day a standard car. You got 4 spark plugs, you just need one wrench to take them out. And once you do it once, really is a lot easier to do when you do it the second time out.
Yeah. In fact, you know what, Bob? I think this time of isolation, I think it's a great time for people who haven't maybe tackled anything on a car ever to actually be a bit brave and go, the car's on the drive. I've got a basic tool set. I've got the internet, and I'm not an idiot. So why don't I just try, even if it's not to change anything, if it's just to investigate, just pop the bonnet with the engine off and go, how do I get an air filter out? How do I get a panel filter out? How do I get a pollen filter out? And before you know it, you could just take the pollen filter out, order a new one and replace it. And it will cost, I don't know, £8. And you haven't broken the car. So I actually think it's quite an exciting time to encourage a little bit of hands-on tinkering. I quite like that,
especially with the air filter.
I'm going to show my
out the air filter and hoover it.
Yeah,
that's such a cheap skate.
Is it like tapping a rug outside? You just tap it on a wall for a minute and then put it back in.
Yeah, exactly. And all the dust goes poof onto the ground, and then you put it back in again. It's fine. It's
Bob's thrifty tips. You see, that's what it is.
I'm here for the really cheap version way of getting something fixed. Cross 13 says he met you a couple of years ago at a show in London with the flux capacitor, and from memory you used a brushed motor for extra torque. Any plans to put a motor with less maintenance in the car?
I used a brush motor just because it was proven and tough. And the honest truth was, when I was buying the motors in that car, I couldn't afford a brushless equivalent. We were considering an AC brushless option, but each motor was, at the time that the spec we needed was about 18 grand, and the brushed motors that we put in were about 2.5, 3 grand each. So there was a monumental difference in cost. Coupled with the fact that if you blew a DC, wound brushed motor up, it wasn't going to be absolutely deal breaking, whereas an AC motor of 18 grand was up. I mean, my budget for the entire project was less than 30. So I don't actually own the car anymore. That I need to point that out. I don't own the flux capacitor anymore. I quietly sold it. When was it? Was it 2 years ago? I sold it 2 years ago. And the reason, and I need to do a video on this actually, because I get asked this a lot. I sold it because I'd got the world record and it had taken a huge amount of time as well as money to get it competitive and to do what I needed it to do. And the deal with my wife always was do 2 full seasons of racing, get the record if you can. But at the end of the second season, if you haven't achieved the record, you've got to stop anyway. And I'll be honest, it was really exhausting doing a normal job, trying to do R&D and on that car and fund it. And when I retired, I sort of quietly retired it after the 2016 season, which was when it got the world record. And as much as I would have liked to have kept it, basically what happened was I retired the car. It was parked there, still usable. And one of my sponsors, whose family were related to the original Enfield project back in the late 60s, early 70s, he said to me, he said, what are you gonna do with the car? Are you gonna sell it? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, like, who would buy it? It's one of those really odd. And he said, if you ever sell it, I'll buy it. And my wife got wind of this, and my wife basically, yeah. You know what it was? My wife said, "You've done it. You bought the car in 2012. You competed in it in 15 and 16. Just sell it. We need the money for the house, and we do need the money for the house. It's not a lie." And the guy said, "I'll buy it off you. I'll fly you over to Greece because he lives in Greece. He's got business in Greece." And basically, he put me up for a day. He took me out for dinner. We had a chat. I gave him a big folder of stuff, and he went, "I'll buy it." And he bought the car. But what's really weird is he's never seen the car. The car is still in the UK. The car is in the National Bubble Car Museum or on display, and he's never seen it. So I sort of communicate with the museum to keep the car there. The battery pack's not in it. The battery pack's in Hampshire, in a case, being analysed, I suppose. and the car is at the moment not drivable. So it's this weird scenario where
Sort
I
of sold
want
them
to
a
drive
lemon.
the car again. Pardon?
You sort of sold them a lemon, like you sold them a car's not even driving, not available.
No,
Oh,
and we've talked. The owner has talked about letting me kind of drive it again as an exhibition vehicle, and I'd like to do that. But I'd love to build another car. But the problem is I know how much it would cost and how much time I'd be involved, and I couldn't do it, I don't think, without the backing of an OEM if I was going to go
yeah.
even harder, even faster.
Building
So,
cars is not easy. I mean, look at any car company and go, look how hard it is to build an actual car from a car company. Building it yourself it can be nightmarish. If something goes wrong, one
hell
one
yeah.
false mistake, one error in the choice of parts you've picked or whatever, and the whole deal is broken by it.
Oh yeah, and racing a car, there's an obvious danger. We were trying to push the boundaries in a car that's 9 foot long. What could possibly go wrong?
When your face is the airbag. Got a good
Yeah.
question here. Hi, Bob and Johnny. What are your thoughts on electrifying Bentley? Already heavy as it is, I cannot imagine adding more weight with its batteries. What are your thoughts? Thanks. That's from Reunilau. Can't pronounce one of those internet usernames that I can't pronounce.
Okay. Well, Rolls-Royce did the 100EX or whatever it was called quite a few years ago now, that experimental electric Phantom, which they should have built. I think Rolls and Bentley should have a fully electric saloon. I think it makes perfect sense. They're always trying to make engines quiet and very torquey. However, I think the car would need to be made of a different material. But if you're paying 300 grand for the best of the best sort of limousine, just make the bloody thing out of carbon or super lightweight aluminium or composites. There's options, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think that's what I think they should do. I just think Bentley shouldn't make cars out of so much metal.
No,
when you could buy a BMW i3 that's such an amazing piece of engineering. When you look at a Bentley, you go, what are you actually getting for your money? Don't get me wrong, you're getting beautifully made, stitched seats and chrome knobs, and the build quality is just nuts, but it weighs 2.5 tons. That's just silly.
Yeah, and if you add a battery underneath it, then it's going to be 5.5 tons, and it's starting to get into. You're not going to make any money out of this, and you're not going to make any range out of this because it won't be able to go very far.
Yeah. I think they should do it, but they should use alternative materials that are available now.
One of the funniest things happens here on my channel every week. Someone comes in and they impersonate somebody else. So they come in with a username that is somebody else entirely, and they pretend to be them. And I don't know how to do it, but they do it every week in the chat. And this week they've picked Vicky Butler Henderson to come in and be Vicky.
Oh, okay.
It's not Vicky in the chat, but every single week that happens, and I don't know who it is or what to do, but it's usually quite entertaining for a little bit, and then you get fed up because they don't go away. Cormaca says, actually epic that the lads are chatting away here. Genuinely love it. So loads of comments going in. Europarts are doing delivery for parts in the UK if anyone's looking for parts for their cars. So Europarts are still delivering stuff.
That's good.
Yeah. The Johnny Dub says, and he's a regular commenter. So, hey Johnny, remember you back from the Fast Car magazine days? Bring back the Novas and the Saxos.
Well, I never worked for Fast Car, but I did work for Revs and then Max Power. And it's funny how nostalgic people are starting to get about those. I think it's sort of hit the sort of 20-year mark when it becomes retro and acceptable again.
Yeah,
that's the gist I get.
Nostalgia is a very powerful thing. There's a lot of companies doing it right now. They bring back, look at the Ford Puma. They're pushing on nostalgia. The car has nothing to do with the original Ford Puma, but they're trying to push the nostalgia into
it. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be dug up from that era of pre-social media, dicking about in cars in car parks, the whole cruising culture.
Handbrake turns.
Girls. Yeah, it was sort of laddism in cars.
Yeah.
For good and for bad.
I grew up with the same idea. You got a car to get girls, That was your main purpose, mainly behind cars, and maybe to get a job as well would be useful if you get the job using the car and a girl using the car. You know, if you do both, it was really good.
Yeah.
But basically, you only ever polished or shined your car, or did handbrake turns, or burnouts, so you can impress girls. That was my whole point.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that my car would attract girls, but it didn't. I don't think I never got girls because of my car.
No,
It's a bit sad, really.
it is.
But but
You felt good.
but I got, I enjoyed all the journeys I went on in the car and made some great memories. But girls, yeah, that didn't really happen, sadly.
No, not me either. Now it's not. Now cars, with all the cars we have access to, it's definitely nothing to do with girls anymore. Now it's just having fun now these days.
I mean, my wife doesn't really care about cars, if I'm honest. She likes what she likes, car wise, but she's not like a car fanatic at all. No.
Mine's the same. My kids don't know any different. I don't know about your kids, but my kids don't know any different than having a press car or getting in and out of different cars. So for a while, my kids used to wonder why their friends would call over to the house and they were always driving the same car. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, there is a bit of that. Both my kids are interesting. My daughter is probably more into vehicles than my son. My daughter's mad into cars, motorbikes, hot rods. I mean, yeah, she's really into it. She keeps begging me for a smart roadster, and I said to her, "You're 10. What am I going to do with the bloody thing?"
Leave it there for another.
She loves smart roadsters. That's her thing.
All I want to do is get a lift back from the pub. So I have a daughter who's 11 years old, so I'm going to teach her to drive around 15 or 16, and from there on out, I'm walking.
Yeah, pub taxi. Good idea.
Oh God, yeah,
Very good.
Have to have that. Minsk, who comments every week as well, is asked. Well, he's not actually asking questions. Stayed in the ministry. The obvious here. He says, "I needed a car for 2 weeks, and I got $150 1976 Plymouth Fury. The leaf springs rusted through the boot floor. We took wood planks and U-bolts and fixed it. You heard wood crack on big bumps that had made it for 2 weeks. That's the story. That would have been like an 80s story normally, in fairness."
Wow, so using wood as the spring hangers in a Plymouth Fury. That's properly hillbilly.
Yep, that's definitely going to come to the floor.
Yeah. But I heard of some terrible bodges in the 70s that people used to do when they didn't have access to a welder. It really shocks me, but it was the thing. I know people that have sanded down cars now and they found 70s newspaper in the door bottoms and all sorts of stuff. I mean, terrible stuff. Thomas
Clark asks, will this be the last chance we get to buy a powerful car like a 3-litre TDI Audi A6 or, the kind of big engine stuff that's been out there for a while, excluding commercials, kind of performance, or not performance, but high-powered diesel cars, I suppose. Is this our last chance last year?
Yeah, I reckon he's probably right, because the thirst for them to be developed and sold new is quickly dying. So as a result, buying a BMW 330D type of car, or 2.5 litre diesel Audi, it's the market, them on the second-hand market, I haven't checked recently, but I bet their big diesels are just dying on their arse.
Yeah, you couldn't get another 10 years on that.
Didn't Audi do a V12 TDI Q7?
They did, yeah, that's right, yeah. They've done some serious engines.
Yeah, the V10 diesel Touareg and the V12 Audi TDI, if you could convert those to run on bio, which I'm sure you can, now would be a time to buy one of those if you towed a horse box or a race trailer. Otherwise, why on earth would you want an SUV with 10 pistons burning diesel? I don't know. It's not really It's not that useful.
They were kind of their time, weren't they? Those big diesels and big petrols were kind of a status symbol for a little bit, that kind of Autobahn model munchen thing that's out there now. But now hardly anyone really does that long commute anymore. And I know you've been commuting in electric cars and found it okay.
Yeah.
It would drive me insane in Ireland. We just don't have enough charge points, and there's never a charge point where I want one at the other end. We haven't sorted out that thing. But I could definitely do the commute here in electric. So the need for a big diesel now is just not there anymore. 2-liter diesels are still so quite efficient.
No, and of course, what the manufacturers have been doing for years now is downsizing displacement and being much cleverer with direct injection and forced induction and all that stuff. So you're now seeing little engines which we would have laughed at 15 years ago going into bigger bodied cars, and most of the time actually being pretty good. It is forcing people to be definitely more clever with piston motors. The death of the big diesel. Yeah.
Colin Whelan is going to take on a little job this weekend. He wants to fit Model 3 mud flaps. He says it's easy the thing he can possibly do to get started. I don't know what else service-wise you could do on a Model 3, to be honest with you, other than hoover it or something.
Fitting mud flaps. Well, it'll be bad for your aero, but then depending on where you live, maybe it'll protect the car. Because, I live near a load of farms. In winter, it's impossible to keep the car clean. It's a real challenge. So,
and the smell.
Mud flaps. Yeah, mud flaps. What else could you do?
Electric car. Can't do anything.
Polish.
You could.
Apparently, ceramic coating a car can help with their aerodynamic efficiency, but like minutely, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Minutely.
Okay, so Brian O'Donnell says, what are your thoughts on replacing an air filter with a performance KN or Piper Cross air filter on a standard car? Does anyone do that anymore?
Well, I was going to say that is quite a 90s upgrade. I think I read a recent report that someone had done in a magazine where they actually put them on the rolling roads, and many of the cars with an aftermarket filter had a worse performance than a standard panel filter. Which is a bit of an odd one.
That's terrible. In the 90s, everybody put on those filters on their cars in the hope that they're going to go faster. And then you park up with your bonnet open and show everybody the filter.
That's right. I think it depends on the era of car and what quality of filter. I would definitely do your research. Cheap aftermarket air filters are probably cheap for a reason. But also with the standard panel air filter, you can put a different panel in. So it uses the same air box, but a different panel. You'll get more induction noise. If it's noise you're looking for, you'll definitely achieve that with like a cone air filter. And I've put K&Ns on carburetor cars, and you get a better snort.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether you get more actual power. I couldn't comment. But if you're bored, try it.
Yeah, if not, yeah, sure, why not? Quick ad break for everybody. There is a list of links down below underneath the comments of this that lead you to Jonny's car YouTube channel. You should subscribe there. You should subscribe to my one as well. We're both on Twitter and Instagram and wherever else. I'm sure if you Google our names, you will find us on everything out there that's possible. So subscribe to everybody. There's Patreon links and PayPal links on both our channels as well, so check that out. Good question from Robert Doyle. And this is probably a difficult question to try and predict, but hi, Bob and Jonny, where do you think the British car industry will go? Will it ever revive? I don't think it'll ever revive to what it used to be.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the mid 50s, it was the British car industry was the biggest exporter of cars in the world. How times have changed, right? I mean, right now things are very odd. As you know, I mean, Jag Land Rover are having a really awful time trying to shift cars, which started with them bringing out a diesel at exactly the wrong time, which is not their fault. Yeah, I feel for them. I really do, because these things cost millions of euros to develop, and then if the market suddenly switches track, what the hell do you do? So will the British car industry ever recover? I think British as a car manufacturer, maybe not. But what Britain's really good at is being a cottage. As cottage industries, we're really good. Obviously racing companies that make racing components and innovation for that, we're really good at. A lot of it. There's a lot of EV innovation going on, either little components or big projects. I don't know what's going to happen with Aston Martin.
Yeah, it's hard to predict as well. But then if you look at the British car industry was made up of men in shirts and sheds. There was lots of sheds. There was hundreds of manufacturers at one point in Manchester, Liverpool area. And it was lads smoking pipes and trying to figure out how to make cars go faster. It's a business now. It has to make money. It has to make profit now. There's huge investment goes into it now. So it's much harder for a car company to turn a profit without selling in the way that Volkswagen do millions of cars. You have to shift hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars to every single dealership. So you can't go back to that kind of cottage industry of Lotus or, those kind of older ones, TVR or someone could come back and make one or two cars a year, but that's about it,
Exactly. And that's why you got companies like Ariel and Radical and just trying to think of a couple of other really niche British car manufacturers that can export, and they're very, very. And Morgan, let's take Morgan.
Yeah,
they're unusual and they're quirky, and that's kind of why people are attracted to them. But they're not. They're never going to be mass produced, and I guess I think those are the companies which will continue. And the companies that make bits for other cars, make carbon. I've spoken to a couple of carbon fiber manufacturers in this country who are doing really well, but they make specific carbon fiber bits for another car. And that's a British industry. I think that'll work. I think it's probably the same in Ireland. I don't know. What's it like in Ireland?
We have, down on the West Coast, we actually have a lot of little small companies that make parts for Volkswagen cars, Skodas, and, dashboard components and tiny electric bits. We used to manufacture, Ford here was in Cork, and we used to assemble cars in a plant in Dublin, a few plants. But whether they would ever get to the point of having that unified ability now to be able to pull together a car like DeLorean or something up in the north, I don't know if that could ever happen again.
No, it would be interesting to see if it does happen again. I think I can't see it happening. I can't see it happening.
I think the little conversion stuff might happen more often. I mean, there's guys giving classes now how to convert a standard car into an electric car. You can bring your own car. They're providing the parts and that sort of stuff, which I agree with to some degree. But if it had a good engine, I think you should just leave it alone. Don't rip any Aston Martins apart or anything,
Yeah. Oh yeah. New Electric. Is it New Electric in Ireland?
Yeah,
they're doing some brilliant. I mean, I really want to go and see what Kevin's doing with regards to that. I think that's going to have a new wave of interest from people who want to do DIY transplants using salvage bits. And like you say, if there was a prestige car, like you could get a 1,500 quid 7 Series BMW.
Yep.
But if the engine's either blown or if the car is being taxed out of usefulness because of its engine size, but the rest of the car is a good car, I can totally see repurposing being a good thing in that instance. I'm fascinated.
You'd have to spend a bit of time making sure you're getting the right car, there's a comment there from Office as well. It says, "Hi, Bob Johnny, greetings from Austria. I just bought a used VW Phaeton W12 with 160,000 kilometers from 2004. What do you think about preserving it?" So I would be in favor now of leaving that alone. No electrics in that one. What do you think?
Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, I suppose what are you buying it for? If you were going to use that Phaeton as like a special weekend car, or like going on holiday in it a couple of times a year and stuff like that, then keep it as it is, because it will be a bit of a unicorn. But if you want to use that Phaeton every day, then maybe you could use that as a conversion. That car with VW ID running gear at some point or something like that. That could be awesome. I think the joy of the Phaeton is that it's a weird car because it's a Bentley with kind of sensible clothes, isn't it?
Yeah. Anonymous nearly.
Yeah. I mean, a guy I met the other year what did he do? He lives in he works, sorry, in Milton Keynes. He lives in Durham. And Monday to Friday, he lives down in Milton Keynes, and then he goes back to see his family in Durham. And he bought a £4,000 V6 Phaeton diesel because he says, like, yeah, Friday night, it's just an effortless 4-hour journey or whatever it is. And he says economy, he can get a good economy. He's just with his cruise control on. And then Sunday night does the same. And he said, honestly, Johnny, it's like, it feels like a Bentley for £4,000 and I'm getting half decent economy. So for him, for his journeys, it's like, that makes sense. You know, that's great.
Yeah.
So, he's getting excellent value Phaeton.
Where do you think hydrogen is going to land in the middle of all of this? Because I'm starting to see more and more little bits coming from Toyota, particularly, who are really pushing it because of Mirai, obviously. But I'm starting to see other bits and pieces coming as well about different ways. The sponge thing came out yesterday, which allows you to be able to sponge up and hold on to hydrogen for longer. It's all, I know there's a lot of funding stuff. People are looking for funding, but where do you think it's going to land? Will it be something that's useful out there or something we're going to forget about after a while?
I think hydrogen in passenger cars is going to struggle to catch on because of because of packaging hydrogen itself and the components in a car-sized package. Whereas I think HGVs, I think hydrogen is massively more useful in an HGV than EV. If you think what a journey, the journey a lorry has to do, I think a hydrogen fuel cell and a lorry chassis is a no-brainer. In the same way that a motorhome, if you had a full-size motorhome, that would be awesome as a hydrogen vehicle because you're going to do lots of miles in it because it's a motorhome, and it's a bloody great big heavy thing, a brick with a chassis where you could put hydrogen tanks. I think I can't see it working in smaller cars. I can see it working with vans. The larger of the van, and like a Luton body, the things which do all the deliveries, like DPD van or whatever.
Yeah, big sprinters, Mercedes sprinters, and
and
transits and things.
Yeah, and Mercedes had fuel cell technology. I drove a hydrogen B-class Mercedes years ago. So I could see that working, and that'll be interesting to see where EV stops and where hydrogen kind of starts with, like, let's say an average transit van. Should that be EV? But if you want a long wheelbase or high roof transit for certain purposes, that then becomes hydrogen fuel cell, or a Luton body, that becomes hydrogen fuel cell. So I think that's the way I personally think HGVs should be hydrogen fuel cell, and bigger delivery things which do longer miles. Mirai, don't know.
I haven't driven it. I've only ever sat in it for a few minutes. I keep getting in going, my God, it's very ugly on the outside. Like, it just doesn't. Oh, it's hideous looking.
The proportions are just all kinds of wrong, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they got wings. It's like someone took an ordinary car and got some modified wings down in the shop, put them all on it around the outside of it. Just doesn't make any sense visually.
No, it doesn't. No, it's not a great design.
Luke McNamara says, Johnny, I very nearly met Tiffany Daly's at Silverstone Classic last year, but we didn't want to interrupt him working as it was a mistake. He's a hero of mine, according to Luke. I met Tiff myself actually at the hill climb. I don't know what he was doing there. I don't know, maybe he was driving later on in the day, but he's pretty hard to interrupt. Tiff is pretty good when he starts talking. He's good.
Oh yeah, he's a good talker. Yeah. Tiff's great, I was on the phone to him 2 days ago. He's a really lovely bloke. I'd call him a friend as well as a work colleague. You know what you're going to get with Tiff, and the thing is about Tiff is he's such a professional. He's got all the stories in the world, and you forget what he achieved as a driver because he's just really good at just chatting and messing around in a road car. But you forget that he's done Le Mans numerous times, and you forget that he's done Formula 2 and all that stuff. And I kind of pinch myself occasionally going, I'm just talking to Tiff in his back garden. Yeah. And just, as a middle-aged man, but actually he's way more than that. He's a British institution. When we lost Stirling Moss last week, which was very sad, I had a moment of going, Tiff's kind of a treasure similar to Sterling Moss, I think, and he looks so much younger than he really is. Tiff does. I'm a little bit jealous of that. I don't know what I mean, his diet is appalling, but it works for him. He doesn't eat vegetables.
Oh God.
He doesn't like vegetables, but look at him.
He's all right, does he?
Who am I to judge?
Oh yeah, you could be a vegan and look an awful lot worse than Tiffany, that in fairness.
Yeah.
Everyone on the channel knows my hatred of a particular car, and it's a Nissan Tida, right? I can't bear the sight of it. It's like some sort of wild. It's like it was made for somewhere else in the universe, and we got it by mistake. So every time I see one, it makes me feel a little bit sick. And plus, I've driven it twice. I drove a diesel one once with a 5-speed gearbox, and I didn't fit in the car. Just you just don't sit. You sit on the seat. You don't sit in the seat. No.
Yeah.
So Simon Thompson wants to find out what you think of a Nissan Tida.
I'm trying to think if I've driven one or not. I think I have driven a Tida. It's very forgettable, and it is an awkward looking thing. It's not a car which the world necessarily needed, and I think it's like an awkward marriage car where the body and the drivetrains and the interior don't work. I liken it to a car which I don't know if you guys got in Ireland. I think you did. Was it a Mazda 131?
131. I wonder if it was a Ford Fiesta as well.
Yes. Yeah. And just before the Ford Fiesta, they did one which all of them, for some reason, had a cloth sunroof.
I remember that
one I mean.
Yeah, I do.
And the front looks the same as the back, and the roof is too high for the body. I mean, it's so awkward.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to buy one and destroy it.
I've had one of those as a hire car once. They're very fast because they weigh nothing. There's nothing at all in them. Back in 2000 and, I don't remember what year it was. We went to Greece, myself and my now wife, but she was my girlfriend back then. And we got a hire car. It was supposed to be a nice car, and they gave us this Mazda 121 bubble car.
Was it a 121? It was the 121.
Yeah, it's like a little bubble. It had a bubbly rear end and a bubbly front and stuff. But it was very fast and had no ABS. And I tried that because I nearly rear-ended the tractor on a corner. No ABS on it.
So your Tida is my 121, like 90s Mazda 121.
We should buy one of each and crash them into each other for a video.
Well, let's do grass track or something, a really amateur race.
Yeah.
Totally standard ones.
Oh, that'd be good crack, actually, wouldn't it?
Yeah, totally standard. You're not allowed to, apart from maybe tyres, and that's it.
Yeah, different set of tyres and done.
Yeah.
Mohammed Lone asks your early thoughts on a Mark 8 Golf GTI. I'm not a big fan of the new Golf at the moment. I think it looks a bit awkward.
It is a weird looking car because it looks almost more Passat than a Golf, isn't it? Somebody likened the front end of it to look like a sloth. If you get a pic, because it's kind of got sort of slightly sad eyes.
Yeah.
And as someone that drove a lot of miles in a Mark 7 and a Mark 7.5 Golf, I think the interior of the Mark 8 is exceptional, like another level of luxury. I just don't know about the exterior. It's almost like VW have just kind of gone, yeah, there it is. But guys, the ID3 is where we've put all our money and time, and that's over here.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's the thing. The ID3 is the golden child right now. So
plus the Golf 7 was such a damn good car. Just and every car in the GTI version, the diesel version, the petrol version, they were all just good, decent, honest cars, the standard one.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? Do you need a Mark 8, or do you just find a really, really clean, low mileage, high spec, whatever spec that you want, Mark 7 or Mark 7.5? You know,
or get a Golf R if you really want to frighten yourself a bit.
Oh hell, yeah. Golf R's aren't worth much right now, I don't think.
No, 4-wheel drive, very hard to fix. No, bad fuel economy as well. But if you want something for the weekend and a bit of a sleeper car, you can go anywhere and present it to anybody.
Oh yeah, a D-badge Golf R is a weapon.
Yeah, proper weapon. I drifted one by mistake. I was going to a press launch, and it was a press car as well. I was coming out of a junction and just turning right, coming out of a junction. The whole car did a 4-wheel drift, just pulling off the line. And this woman was flashing lights at me to tell me to slow down and behave myself on the road. But it was totally out of my control. It had nothing to do with me at all. It just happened while I was doing it. Ambrose McGarry says, "Hi, Bob and Johnny. Do you think Rivian R1T will make a everyday workhorse alternative to diesel? Thanks." Have you driven Rivian?
I've not driven one. I've tried to. I personally think the Rivian R1T is will be a hard car for Tesla to beat. I'm not convinced that the Tesla Cybertruck will be a better vehicle than that. I mean, I think there's a lot about the Cybertruck that I just think is smoke and mirrors, but we will save that for another day. But I think the Rivian is exceptional. As I've looked around it in detail, I've sat in it, I've talked to the engineers. I'm not even a pickup truck fanatic, but you could use an R1T as a normal family car. There's so much going on in it as a package, and the spec that they're claiming, and also I've looked at the build quality of it. The build quality looks amazing.
Yeah,
that is a convincing car, the Rivian.
And where do you see the hookup going with Ford? Do you think Ford is going to, if Ford survive the next 2-3 years, of course, but if Ford get together with Rivian and do a proper, rollout, because they tried Mondeo electric and stuff, and it's not really up to standard yet. So
no, I think it should be. I think it would make so much sense for them to do that, because obviously the electric F-150 will be a hugely successful car. It should be, but also if they made a smaller version, the Ranger, a full EV Ranger using parts from the Rivian, I could see that working. The Ranger's a good truck.
I love the Ranger Raptor. I absolutely adore that car. I don't know why. It's one of them big stupid vehicles that don't make any sense to be driving on the road, but yet I love it.
That's exactly the conclusion we came to when we drove it. It's like it shouldn't make sense. It's daft, but it's a very good. And I think if you had a guilt-free pickup truck, I think there's a lot to like there. It can tow, it can have stuff in the back. There's enough luxury and space inside for a family. Loads of luggage possibilities. Yep. I mean, hell, why not?
Plus, it goes everywhere. But that suspension on the back, when I had it here as a press car, there was a guy tailgating me one evening. When they're really, it just drives me nuts. They've got their face against the windscreen and they're very close to the back of your car as well. But I had the Ranger Raptor, so I wasn't really worried about it. But I went over a speed bump a bit quick, so like 60, 70 kilometers per hour, and he didn't. He hadn't got the same suspension. So that lovely Fox suspension did his job there perfectly, and he kind of ground out on the speed bump. But not that I did that on purpose, of course, but just, I hate when I'm being tailgated. What's your worst fear? When you're on the road, what's the worst thing? What other drivers do? What is the worst thing? Apart from tailgating.
What kind of trait for a driver, you mean? Tailgating's quite bad. People that leave, either drive with no lights on when it's blatantly dark because they've forgotten to check that the lights are functioning. That's really annoying. I worry about people driving with sunglasses on when it's really, really overcast and dull, because you think, what are you massively hungover, or are you just stupid? What's going on here? What's the story? I got overtaken in thick fog once by a guy in a Hyundai coupe wearing sunglasses, and I'm telling you, it was so foggy you probably couldn't see 20 feet. He went past me quite fast, but not so fast that I couldn't see that he was wearing sunglasses. I was thinking, he's just driving completely blind. What, does he have a special power? What's going on?
If something with his glasses, he can see better.
Yeah, I mean, he might not be alive anymore. I don't know where the guy went, but yeah, that was kind of weird.
Fella did a great commentary. He says he used to do a Tiffany Dell in Gran Turismo. He would drive around at speed 180 degrees into reverse, then 180 degrees back on the track. So he likes his Tiffany Dell. In fairness to Tiff, he could power slide a space shuttle, I reckon. Tiff, he is an amazing pilot. See him do what he does.
Well, I think the mettle of a talented driver is someone that can get in a car who's never been in that car before, and get it consistently sideways at high speed without any worry at all. And that's Tiff. I've seen him. I've been in the car with him, and he's done it. It's incredible. It's talent that you wish you had, that takes decades to perfect, I guess. Yeah.
It's funny. I've never
quite,
been a fan, well, not for a very long time, of anything Formula One or any of those kind of high profile race things that go on TV. But when it comes to something like BTCC or something that's really like rubbing is racing sort of stuff, you know, it's really close quarter things. I love that. That does
yeah.
get me going right. Yeah.
That's me too. Rallycross, BTCC. I relate to it a bit more. I've never been a fan of open wheel racing too much, really. I find it's become a bit overly priced and sort of overly sanitized. But I know those rules will probably change soon.
Another question here from Mini Eggs. Johnny, have you ever owned a car with a light interior and it was a nightmare to keep clean? And we've all had one of them as a butter. Also, Bob loves a Skoda Superb. What's your view on them?
Well, I'll start with the second question. I love the Superb. I think what a car. I mean, if you think the Phaeton's good, the Superb is just, it's so confident that they called it the Superb at the risk of it being crap. I think that shows confidence in your product. It's that rear legroom in the Superb. It's just nuts.
If you're going to look at a Passat or you're going to look at anything in that sort of range, your first port of call should be Superb, just because you can compare the difference in size from the same chassis and the same stuff, same engines and everything. But it's a much bigger car.
It's that example of a Skoda being better than their more premium brother. So yeah, I love a Superb. I'm trying to get my brother to get one actually, because my brother's a Skoda fan. The other question was, just remind me, what was the other question?
A white interior car. Have you ever had to look after a white interior, light interior car?
I don't think I've ever owned a white interior myself, but I had a press car, a Mercedes S-Class convertible.
Ooh, wow.
And it was a white car. Did it have a white roof? It might have had a cream coloured roof, and it had white interior and white carpet. I nearly had a heart attack when it arrived.
Oh my God, no thanks.
It arrived completely valeted as they do, and the first job had to take my kids to school, and it was pissing with rain. So obviously I didn't have the top down, but had to get children in the back of a car with a white carpet, and like it was muddy and rainy. Oh my gosh, it was ruined instantly. It was ruined instantly.
And then, you know, if you drive around with the roof down on that, people are just going to spit on you or throw stones at you, surely. In a white car, white roof, white interior.
Yeah, they will, or just tip leaves into it when you park it. I don't know. Yeah, honestly.
What a weird choice.
I think a white interior can look lovely in a classic car. I mean, off-white is probably your safest option. Brilliant white is dangerous.
Yeah. Andrew Palmer points out that CO2 warms the planet. The particulates coming from their exhaust, we breathe it in. I think we've been doing that for a very long time, though, when it comes to CO2. It's not necessarily, it's not only CO2, I think, is the problem. I think people want cleaner air. And this lockdown, I don't know how lockdown is affecting us hugely here. Air is cleaner. I run a bit and I go out and cycle and stuff. So I find that the air is much cleaner every day. I seem to be able to hear birds more often. It just seems to have a sort of a cleaner effect on things. So is that happening in your area as well, that sort of cleanup effect?
Yeah, I think if we take nothing else from this situation, we should realize that nature is thanking us. And maybe as humans, we're taking a bit of time to appreciate our immediate surroundings a bit more and think what we do as humans either preserves or wrecks what's going on around us.
Yep.
And I think, you know, and I'm saying that as a car fanatic and you're saying it as a car enthusiast, but at the same time, I think you've still got to be responsible in some way. And I've missed driving. I really missed it. Going to the shops has been exciting because I get to drive my car 1.5 miles. It's weird. But at the same time, I think, seeing hearing nature a bit more and seeing the roads being so ghostly quiet, it feels like I get an impression of what it might have been like in the 50s when only wealthier people owned cars, and there was lots of people on bikes. So do you know what I hope is, regardless of whether you're a car enthusiast or not, maybe it will encourage people to think you don't need a car for every journey. There are lots of journeys you can do without a car. And I, as someone with a family, I quite enjoy going out on a family bike ride, even if it's just for 4 miles.
Yeah.
And pop into the shops on a bicycle. It's seen as being novel these days, but like years ago, that it was the done thing.
Yep.
You've only got to go to the shops to get milk and bread and 2 other things. Why don't you just stick a backpack on and ride a bike? Morrison's is only 1.5 miles from me. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's the death of the high street, though. I mean, that's the reason that those big shops exist now, is because we all drove cars to those big outlying superstores that are out there, and the high street is kind of dead in that respect. So this might be the rebirth of that to some degree, or it might mean that people just find different modes of transport. And that's the exciting bit for me as someone who looks at the whole car industry, is how we're changing, how we evolve, how we're using transport. So it's not just driving to work every day in something sporty. Now we're thinking about electric cars for the commute, and a Golf GTI for the garage, or we're starting to consider how we behave towards others. So are you on that same realm of looking to see where things are going to happen next, the next 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, completely, because you've got to see how whether technology is going to be is going to improve your life or annoy you. And as an enthusiast of cars, are you going to be robbed of your freedom? Are you going to have to accept that autonomy has a place? And is autonomy going to be useful? And are we going to have the pub just up the road from me has quite a big car park? Are we going to have like an Amazon autonomous electric pod arrive there, and you get your time slot and you go up there and you just type in a code and it unlocks a box? So I actually see some of this as being really useful. I see some of it being just deeply confusing.
Yeah.
But I think, and also the other thing, when it comes to electric especially, is the rise of rideables, of things that aren't bicycles and they aren't cars and they're not motorbikes. They're a thing. They're a rideable object. So yeah, I've definitely seeing a bit more of that going on. And some of that's cool. And of course, the government doesn't know what to do with some of that stuff.
No, they don't know how to do with the laws surrounding whether it's insurable, whether you need a helmet, whether you need arm pads or whatever it is. But if you remember last year, we were in Paris. We were testing Renault Zoes and a bus, the automated things on the 5Gs and all that sort of stuff. But they still had a guy sitting in the front seat. Do you remember the driver dude with his hands on his lap just to be on the safe side? It sort of took the good out. When I went there, I thought, well, this is deadly. We're going to be on a closed thing. We'd sit in the car and it'll just take me wherever I want to go. But actually, there's a guy driving and he had to take over a couple of times. But is that what you really want? Do you really want to go from a position of, like, I think 15, 20 years before we can actually press a button and a car will appear outside the house. But if we're in a city centre and we want to cross a city, then buses might be irrelevant because of this kind of fast moving single taxi unit.
Yeah, buses might be irrelevant, exactly, because you're in a pod or an autonomous vehicle that can carry 6 people, and that will be attached to apps like we've seen apps like Uber, which are taking over.
Yeah.
And electric black cab. I mean, you could have a Jonny cab. I've talked about Jonny cabs before. I love the idea of a Jonny cab.
Yeah, me too.
So
Schwarzenegger in it.
Yeah, I think that will happen. I think in slow moving urban environments, maybe the bus as we know it will die. I mean, I know some places are bringing trams back, and trams have obviously always been electric, and trams could easily be autonomous, couldn't they? So
yeah. The only thing what we did in Ireland was we had a huge tram system in Dublin. We ripped it all up in favour of cars. And now we're putting the tram system back in again. So we put in a thing called a Lewis, which is the very same thing you see all across Europe. It's one company that does it, but they're basically putting it all back together now. And now it's a victim of its own success. So now so many people use the Lewis that it's crammed. It's like it's a terrible service now at certain times. So they're putting on
Right.
trams, but there's not enough train tracks. And it's this kind of ever evolved. We never seem to plan for 50 years away. We only seem to plan for the next 3 years.
Yeah, and that's probably because governments know that 20 years ahead won't be there. It'll be out of their jurisdiction. It's out of their control, so they can't be bothered to worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very odd one. Yeah, we've done some. I mean, look, the UK when it comes to trains has been terrible for evolution. You know, our train infrastructure is so far behind France and Germany and Italy and Spain. You go there and trains are cheap, they're affordable. The whole point of trains was originally for people that couldn't afford cars.
That's right. Yeah.
And you want a reliable, clean service for people that don't necessarily can either choose not to own a car or can't afford a car. But in this country, trains are expensive and disappointing. And we didn't invest in electric enough. We kind of hopped from steam to diesel because it was easy, and we never really evolved. So, yeah, that annoys me because I get the train into London. If I go to London, I get the train, and I pay a lot of money. And I think I could have driven a Bentley into London for less money. And I'm sat on the floor next to the toilets. What's going on?
Yeah, it's the very same, exactly the same here. I've traveled on trains. I once took a train from Madrid to Barcelona in Spain and was in what they called like a third class carriage. But to me, it looked fine. It was lovely. I had Wi-Fi. It was very efficient. It got there on time. And then I came home and took the train home from Dublin city centre. After landing in the airport, getting a bus to the train station, then a train home, and the smell of urine from everything was horrible. And it would cost way more money for a shorter journey.
And that's the problem with trains in the United Kingdom. I think we're not great at trains, unfortunately.
John Murray wants to know, what are your thoughts on the Ford Puma and EcoSport? Or Ecosport? You call it Ecosport or Ecosport?
Well, Ford calls it the Ecosport, but I call it the Ecosport because it doesn't say Eco, does it?
No,
it's just lying.
It's ECCO, it's Eco. You know.
Yeah. I haven't driven the new Puma yet. I think it looks wise. It's a bit of a grower. There's a Ford dealer just around the corner from me, so I keep driving past it. I haven't got to drive it. So I'm going to remain reservation judgment on the Puma. The EcoSport is terrible.
Yeah, an awful car.
It's a car. It's an embarrassment for Ford. It should just be. It's underwheeled. It's a segment of car which is just crap. I mean, Ford have gone through some really awful, boring products recently. When I say recently, the last 7 years?
Yeah, I was going to say 7 years. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and it's a bit ironic that the Mondeo gets wound down almost and retired, and then there's cars out there like the KA Plus and
it doesn't make any sense.
The EcoSport.
Like the EcoSport has a back door that opens sideways. You know what I mean? You open it out, it opens completely wrong, not the way you expect a fucking back door to open, right? So you open it out, and when it's open, it blows shut on you. If your kids are standing anywhere near, they're going to get mowed down by this door that swings shut whenever it feels like it. But still, they had a big launch for it in Ireland, and on the day of the launch, it was hugely windy here in Ireland. I mean, really properly windy. So the minute we got out on the motorway, you're aiming off for the wind because the whole side of the car was flat as a pancake. So you started drifting in through the corners. Weird car.
It's a lazy car. I think as a product, it's quite lazy. And
I've only driven the Ford Puma internationally. I was on the international launch. I didn't drive it in Ireland. I don't think it's even out here yet, to be honest with you. I'm not sure it's been delivered. It was a fine drive, but a lot of the international cars are very, very high spec. So sometimes the suspension changes when it comes to the actual country. So it can be awful awkward to figure it out.
Yeah. Ford needs to up its ideas. Well, it's done the Mach-E as an EV launch, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
But I think they've just been very slow to bring out better products that are more relevant. They've got the 1 litre EcoBoost motor, which is great, but it's an old engine now. They need to hurry up, frankly.
They don't seem to. Ford US and Ford UK and Ford Europe all seem to be sort of fighting one another in a weird sort of way that kind of one cancels Mondeos and won't do any more of those kind of 3-box saloons, and the other one wants to keep it going. And it's just really kind of awkward where there's a Ford, actual person called Ford still in charge of the company, which makes it a family business. So it's awful awkward, I'm sure, to do business.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and they were going to streamline all their world car product, and I don't think it's streamlined quite as well as they thought it would.
No,
Or as
world cars don't work. Europeans are kind of weird. It's the same, and you could be driving on a motorway in flat pancake tarmac, and 10 seconds later you're on cobblestone streets. That's Europe. It's a weird place. So our suspension is very weird, and it's the same in the UK, same anywhere. We've got this diversity of surfaces that makes cars here really strange. And when you go to the US and you drive those great big long straight roads they have, and you go, why do you even bother putting in shocks? You don't need them here.
That's true. That's true.
Andrew Palmer says we need to promote electric bicycles and scooters and one wheels. I don't know about one. I've ridden a one wheel and nearly killed myself off it. And the same for a cycle.
Yeah. The uni wheel, one wheel thing that they're, I mean, some of them are so quick. I think if you restrict them, whether you can use them, I think they're fabulous. E-bikes. I'm seeing a lot of people getting it back into cycling who haven't cycled for years. And an e-bike, rather than being seen as a cheat, I think an e-bike's a bit of an ego massage. I think it's a good thing because it means you realize you can ride much further with less effort. So it encourages you to ride more, perhaps. And I think as a world, not just a nation, as a human race, we probably need to exert ourselves a bit more, because obviously there's an ongoing problem of obesity and high blood pressure and all that stuff. So I think if it encourages people to get on a bike again, an e-bike is great. I need to ride more. I've ridden a few and they've been exceptional. Electric motorbikes at the moment, there's some good ones out there, but I don't know if they're gaining much traction. I think the cost of them is the biggest problem. And the motorbike sector has long been seen as a leisure sector, rather than back in the olden days, like my dad rode a motorbike because he couldn't afford a car. Those days are over, aren't they?
Yeah, now motorbike riders are dentists and doctors and people going out for a ride on the weekend in a nice big group just for a cruise on a big, very expensive, like 17,000 euro motorbike. You know, it's not a sort of commuter thing anymore. Actually, another good story. My friend of mine, we were doing a race, you know, one of those kind of, it's a mini triathlon. So you run a bit, you cycle a bit, and you run a bit again. When we were cycling up this massive hill, I have a proper road bike, a normal bike, not electric. This old woman, she's got to be 65, maybe 70, overtook me on the hill using an electrically helped mountain bike. And she just goes zooming by and I go, oh man, that's the end of the Tour de France, isn't it?
Yeah. But you could just do an alternative Tour de France with assisted bikes. It would be all kinds of crazy. It'd be like the Group B rally of cycling.
I'm the same for the Olympics. They should do the drug Olympics and the non-drug Olympics and just see how fast the human body can possibly go, you know, be drugged up. And the same for bicycles. Just have a cycling race, see how fast you can make one of those things go electrically assisted.
So, a druggy e-bike Olympics.
Yeah.
Wow.
Serious. Can you imagine?
Just imagine the speed and the gurning going on there.
No, yeah.
That's going to be amazing.
But then, like, that's the way you just entered that, because then you don't have to drug test the rest of them because they're drugged. Just let them off, see how fast they can go.
Yeah, Russia's welcome, China's welcome. Bring them all in. Yeah,
just open it up and let it go.
Yeah.
Robert Doyle points out that in Ireland we have far too expensive trains and buses as well outside of Dublin. It's the very same as the UK, which is right. It is just as bad. Can you ask Johnny where all the good Honda cars have gone from 1990, should I say?
Well, that was, a lot of people are saying that 90s Honda was peak Honda.
Yeah.
Not just cars, but lawn equipment, motorbikes. You know, like my brother has an early 90s Honda mower and it is still perfect. Perfect. It's good. I think what it is one of those situations when, because 90s Hondas were so good, they got used really hard, And because they never went wrong, they possibly got abused more in terms of servicing because they just didn't go wrong. But these things can't last forever. So they probably got to a point where they were the same with 80s Mercedes. I think 80s Mercedes suffer from this because they were so damn good and so robust. You just use them until they drop dead.
Didn't you do an episode? I seem to remember you doing an episode of Fifth Gear a very long time ago where you did chip fat for the
I did on a Mercedes 124.
124, yes. That's gone. You can't get that engine anymore. You'd never get a car to run on chip fat now, would you? It's too sensitive.
No, because I think it's a combination of the sensitivity of fuel pumps now. It's too viscous running it. You can run a biofuel if you're careful. That was the first thing I did on TV for Fifth Gear. The chip fat.
Remember that. See how memorable you are? It stands up.
Yeah, it's funny how many people remember that feature. And I bought that car after the episode and ran it myself for about 18 months.
On chip fat?
Yeah, ran it on veggie oil for ages. Yeah, it was great. It stank, but it was great.
Does it smell out the back? Can you actually smell the chip fat as it drives on the road? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It smelled like a chip shop. Yeah. So, although the downside was it kind of made you hungry. Because even when you'd had breakfast, you drive off in this car and you go, "Oh, I quite fancy a portion of chips or whatever." Yeah, because it was following you. Yeah,
it's like driving by a McDonald's, isn't it? The same thing. You go, "Oh, McDonald's! Oh, that smell of grease everywhere."
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Mini Egg says, when do you think the tipping point will be that means fuel stations start to close through lack of customers?
Wow, that's a good question. I think I don't think that's going to happen because oil companies are already investing in renewable energy because they are foreseeing the future. And the thing that fuel companies with petrol stations have is they already have an existing infrastructure of food, drink, toilets. So you're still going to need those three regardless of what your car runs on. And we'll just see forecourts diversifying in terms of what they offer. So you drive under your canopy, and you'll either have a rapid charge point, but you'll still have Wild Bean Cafe or Starbucks in there, and you can still buy a horrible pasty or a soggy sandwich, and you go to the toilet. It's just that, and of course, ultimately, let's face it, they just want to own the game. If the game becomes electric or hydrogen, they still want to own that game, and they still want to get the profit from the coffee and the sandwich and the toilet stop. So I just think we're going to see.
I think that's where they're all trying to make money at all times is the condiment side of it. Petrol hasn't made money for a petrol station for a long time. So it's always the coffee and the tea and stuff, which is why coffee is £2 or £3, and you have to pour it yourself, and you have to make it yourself. You still pay.
Yeah.
But the big problem I have in electric cars, most of the electric charge points don't actually have a cover. So when you get there, they're often the back end of a car park somewhere, and you stand in the rain trying to plug the thing in. And
I've seen you mention this a few times, and it's really true. There are a couple in Europe which have a canopy, and sometimes the canopy is solar. But having a canopy when the weather's all over the place makes a big difference. And also having a fast charging spot sort of isolated on its own, it's okay for a lot of people because you sit in your car, and I personally just catch up on emails and stuff. But for a lot of people, they're like, yeah, but I want to go to the toilet and I want to buy a coffee or some lunch or whatever. If you don't have access to that, that's an opportunity missed, really.
Cross 13 is thinking about buying a teardrop camper to tow behind his Model 3. I don't seem to find any good designs for sale in Europe, but I found one in the US. It would cost a lot to ship here. Any suggestions? Do you know of any custom camper builders? Maybe
there are. I know there's a caravan maker in the southwest of the UK that makes like a classic teardrop 50s style caravan. So it looks 50s, but it's got modern kitchen and things inside and connectivity. But I bet a lot of there's a few caravan makers that I think are cottoning on to extreme aero now for EVs.
Yeah,
because they've always had to make caravans light, but trying to make them even more aero now is the key. And maybe people will pay more for better materials. You know, a carbon fiber caravan. I mean, it'd be quite cool. I don't know how much it costs.
It would be expensive, but it'd be cool. Can you imagine if we got a little damage on it? We got a little kind of a dent on the back of a carbon fiber.
It still amazes me though how much money caravanners will pay. It's one of the leisure industry is more buoyant than the car industry at the moment.
I absolutely love camper vans. I love them. I don't know why I love them so much, but I just love the idea, particularly something like the VW California or anything like that. That doesn't look, it's just a van, you know, but it pops up a roof and all of a sudden it's a camper van. I love that kind of thing. I'd love to own a camper van, but I don't know where to store the thing. They're just huge, so you can't get away with it. But have you ever tested? Do you test camper vans over there?
Yeah, do. Yeah. I've owned a couple of older camper vans. I've never owned a motorhome because, as you say, they're quite one-dimensional, albeit very good. But when you're not using them, there's this huge, expensive things out there. So that's when caravans win. But I've tested a couple of camper vans, and like you were saying, the VW California and the Mercedes Marco Polo kind of size. Yeah. The joy of them is that you can do the school run in them. Their footprint is the same as an SUV or a big estate car, so it's not as ridiculous as it first appears. If I could afford, well, I've said to my wife already, I want an ID Buzz. I'll put my name down for an ID Buzz as soon as I'm allowed to, and I'll work out how I'm going to pay for it afterwards. But I'm going to
fix the Beetle, sell the Beetle, buy an ID Buzz. No,
maybe. I don't know if I could sell that car, Bob.
No. See, you can't get it back. It's forever your car, no matter who gets it now. It's branded. Like, you might as well just write your name down the side of it now. It's going to be Jonny Smith's car forever, right?
It's weird that since I put that video up, I've had 3 people from school and 1 from university contact me who I haven't spoken to in years through Instagram or through YouTube, going, "My God, Jonny, you've still got that car. Can't believe it. It's ridiculous. I remember those speakers. I remember those wheels." And you're like, wow, where have they been? It's so strange.
And are you a natural hoarder? Do you naturally hold on to everything you want?
Yeah, yeah. When I was single, when I lived alone, when I was a bachelor, a terrible hoarder. Now I've got a family. I'm in a constant battle of, and we can laugh about it, but I am in a bit of a constant battle of like, do I really need that? Should I just sell that? Do I just need to recycle or throw that away? So and it's a blessing and a curse actually, hoarding, isn't it? There's a usefulness to it to a point, and then it's just silly. So I have a bit.
You have those box of nuts or box of things that you've got under a cupboard for the last 15 years, and just one day, you need something out of it, and it makes the hoarding worthwhile. A little adrenaline budge. It's
that garage that my Beetle's in. I've got to empty that in the next 6 weeks, and there's parts for cars in there that I sold 10 years ago. In fact, more than 10 years ago. So I found a box full of Jaguar bits, and the Jag in question I sold in 2006. So nice. Why have I still got those bits? I mean, I'm an idiot. So I need to go through and be a bit more rational. My brother's used to be a hoarder, and he's healed himself. My brother's a bit of a technophobe, but the best thing he ever did was downloaded the eBay app on his phone, and that started the purge. He realized he could make money from bits he kept for no reason for ages, and it's done him the world of good.
The US has a much more sell it on attitude. You can buy things that are broken on Craigslist and stuff in the US. A friend of mine bought a MacBook Pro 15-inch that had been driven over by a car and fixed it and got it back working again. Yeah, he drove it. It's got a bend in the middle of it, but it works fine. And he bought it for $10 off of Craigslist in the US. We just throw that in the bin now, That would be just like, no, it's gone. Forget about it. Claim insurance or something.
I think the mend and make do mentality, I want to champion it. And in this time of isolation, when things like home baking have taken on a new renaissance, I'm trying to, even if I don't need the broken thing anymore, I'm trying to use things like the internet to get parts and to mend something, in the hope that even if you just give it away, rather than it becoming landfill. I like the idea of that, and I hope that younger people do a bit more of that, rather than just this idea of, yeah, look, I've got an old iPhone on my desk. I haven't used that as a phone for 3 years. I use it as a solid state recorder for sound.
Yeah.
But it's an iPhone. It's a good phone. And a lot of people would just get rid or leave it in a drawer. So yeah, I think we need to do that as a society, to just stop mass consumerism snowballing. You know,
I've basically fixed or broken everything in the house, apart from my dishwasher, which broke on day 1 of the confinement and has not worked since. So we've had to wash it as normal. But I've basically, if things were just sort of broken, I've fully broken them so I can fix them, just to kind of pass some time. I'm a fixer. I like fixing things.
Well, there's an amazing sense of satisfaction, and nowadays with YouTube tutorials and stuff like that, it's never been easier, actually.
Yeah, I fixed my kitchen tap from a young, maybe 15, 16-year-old Australian kid. Showed me exactly how to take out the bits and pieces of the innards of my kitchen tap to fix that. So everybody has something to teach you. At some point, everybody can do it.
Yeah. Completely.
Footy Ferrari, who's a regular commenter, says, what do you think of Fiat's current lineup? Do Fiat actually have really a lineup at the moment? But
well, there's a question, Bob. Yeah, Fiat, the 500 is propping Fiat up, and has been for a good few years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they have an electric one just about to come out, but I mean, it's such limited range, such a limited sales point. I mean, you're not going to shift millions of them to save your whole company on one electric car, you know?
No, and yet the 500e came out in America and a couple of other territories like a long time ago, didn't it?
Yeah.
And we never got it, and I always thought that was an opportunity missed. Yeah, what are Fiat going to do? They've had no success with their bigger cars for years.
Tipo was the last. I think the last launch I was on was Tipo. Was it?
Yeah.
And that didn't sell. That hasn't sold. Well, I think they've cancelled it again now. Lovely little car. See, the estate one of those in a diesel would do anybody for the rest of their life, but nobody wants a Fiat.
No, and there's only a certain amount of milking you can do with interesting coloured 500s, you know, pastel 500s. I love the Panda. I've always liked the Panda. Yeah, in fact, I tried to get my wife to buy a Twin Air 4x4, but she was having none of it, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But I think the Panda is actually quite a stylish little neat car. I don't know what Fiat are going to do, because Fiat's FCA, isn't it? And Chrysler have got some weird stuff going on, and of course you've got what you got in there: Alfa Romeo, Lancia, as was
dead as well.
Dodge, Chrysler. I mean, I can't keep track of it. They've got a lot of dead wood in there. I know that. Not
a place I'd want to work, in fairness.
No, and it's kind of sad, really, because if they were quite creative, they might be able to create something good.
In fairness, Fiat should be able to create the ultimate city car. Small cars are what they're really good at. They should be able to create something off the top of their heads that is an amazing, small, perfect unit of a car. But they never seem to hit it. They never seem to try and get it absolutely spot on. They always seem to chicken out or cut their budget at the last minute.
You know what Fiat should? You know the 500L, which was only popular because of Peter Kay.
That's right. Amazing car for a TV show, isn't it?
Apart from that, it's crap. I think Fiat should go, if Fiat are going to go big on retro, and they've proved they can do it, build a multipler again, but the old multipler, not the really ugly one that I actually quite like, but a small people carrier that looks retro like the original 60s multipler.
Yeah.
And then give it a choice of plug-in maybe options as drivetrains. I could really see that working in cities. I also think, and I want to slot this in before the end of our Sunday service, I think, and I hope, that SUVs will die off as people realise they're a jack of all trades and a master of none, and the rise of a half stylish, interesting people carrier will come back. That's what I think.
That's a good prediction, because there's hardly any. All the SUVs blend into one another after a little bit. When you've driven enough of the things, you kind of go, God, they're all the same, really. Particularly the Volkswagen ones, but they are a sort of they don't really have a big boost. They can't really carry 5 people. They can, they're just a kind of a compromise car, because people like the idea of driving tall.
And I borrowed a Peugeot Rifter the other month. The people carrying one with the roof lights and the roof. The roof lights and the shelving in the ceiling. My kids were all over it. They thought it was so exciting, and I basically said, this is a regurgitated van. Yeah,
it's just a van.
But if you could get even more creative and stylish to encourage people out of SUVs and into, a better designed people carrier, I think the stigma of a people carrier killed them. It was like the sort of male castration of the sort of car world. But actually, I kind of miss them now, because we're in SUV overload now.
Yeah. Do you remember the Ford S-Max? That was the one that lads would buy, because it had little fins and things, air vents and stuff on the side of it. That was a pretty cool car.
There's a couple of families who do the school run, and they've still got like the last of the S-Maxes, and they love them. One of those with a couple of cycle racks on the roof. They're really good.
And another type of car that tends to be overlooked at the moment is estate cars. I don't know why we completely blanked them out here in Ireland. You review them and you go, why do you buy the saloon version of this car? It makes no sense. You should buy the estate version, because it makes so much more sense. But would you have a favourite estate car in the market at the moment?
Oh, I mean, I'm a big fan of estates, always have been. At the moment, I mean, all the default ones are the hot AMG Mercedes, the E63, the C63, the Audi RS4 and the Audi RS6, but they're the spaceships. I wish Tesla made an estate. I really do.
Yeah, I know.
Because
one just overlooked as well.
Yeah, because estates need to be popular in America again in order to have that a halo effect on the rest of the world and sales wise. And I know a few American journalists who really mourn the death of the estate, and they want it back. So maybe a company with that people take notice of, like Tesla, could actually make estates cool again. But I think just trying to think of estates on sale right now.
The Peugeot 508 estate is probably the prettiest looking one of all time.
That's one of the last that I drove that I was really captivated by. And the weird thing about that car is I got more looks in that car than I did in a 911 that I had the week before.
Yeah.
People really took notice of the 508, which is proof that you can still design a good-looking estate practical car.
Yeah, it's true. There's many other ones out there in the estate, like the Skoda. I'm a fan of the Skoda Octavia in a sort of a blue with roof bars, and do the whole thing up. It looks like a rally support car when you're driving around it. So
yeah,
that kind of car that just works really well when you look at them.
Yeah.
You can turn up to anything. So you can turn up to dinner with your friends, or you can go out and go drive, and you can turn up at a rally thing. You can do whatever you want. They're the coolest kind of car. Whereas SUVs, you get judged on very quickly.
I like a Volvo estate still. I think the V60,
V90 is gorgeous.
V90s are really stylish. I mean, a V90 versus an SUV, like, no comparison to me.
No,
but
like a spaceship versus a box.
Yeah. I know. I'm big. We sold our last estate a couple of years ago, but when an EV estate comes out, that's when I'm back in the game. VW are going to do it, aren't they? I know VW are going to do it.
They will have, yeah. They had that virtual tour thing, which they did recently, and on that there is a VW estate electric car.
It's like an EV Passat next gen almost. Yeah.
Sort of a weird looking. I can see what they're probably trying to target is the business market. What I want them to target is me. Is to just come out with a good car.
I want Audi to do an e-tron all road, basically.
Yeah.
If you had an A6 all road fully electric, I'm in. Raised suspension capability, roof bars, sexy kind of rugged looks, I'd be all over that. I think that would be great.
Do you remember the Audi A6 bi-turbo, the diesel one?
I
The
do.
noise of that engine. I love that car. If you could make electric cars sound like that, more people would buy electric cars.
Oh yeah. Have you seen how much they are secondhand now?
Oh, the fetching good one? No, I didn't look. No.
Like nothing.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
I mean, you can get in a first generation all-road A6 all-road bi-turbo for like less than £2,000. I mean, like what a lot of car for the money.
That's an impossible. Like that's a tiny investment. Even you can't lose money on that. You can't. You could never lose money on that.
I don't think you could lose, because even if you destroyed it after a year, you could break it for so many parts. There's so many parts on that.
Have you had a go in the Polestar stuff? Because they'll probably have an estate.
I'm slightly frustrated to say that COVID-19 destroyed my Polestar 1 driving experience, because they tried to deliver it to me as all this was kicking off, and I got denied. So I'm really looking forward to Polestar 1 and 2. Polestar 2 being the more important car, but I think Polestar are the sort of the sexy face of eco motoring in many ways.
And of course, MG are back as well, aren't they?
Yeah, because take Tesla out of the equation. Everyone always wants to know whether anybody can take the fight to Tesla. That's what everyone compares it to. But I think the thing about Polestar is it's got an element of style which Tesla doesn't have.
Yeah, it's true. But Tesla have it all their own way to some degree, because Tesla has been just making electric cars since forever, and not, they've never had to deal with the petrol and diesel service industry or any of the bits that's behind that. So that's why they've got it all their own way. They can kind of run away with it for a moment. But once Volkswagen, I think, really pay attention, I think they're going to reel in Tesla market share very quickly.
We're going to meet. We're at this point where Tesla are a young company who have learnt so quickly, but they don't have the legacy of dealerships, like you say, and after sales care and all those traditional elements. Yeah. And you've got the legacy manufacturers here going, hell, we need to build a car like a Tesla. We know how to service it, and we know how to get parts for it and paint it if somebody reverses it into a wall. And then you're at this point where they're on a head-on collision. They're like, Tesla needs to mass produce better.
Yep.
And mass producers, legacy guys, need to build an electric car better. When are we going to get that? Bang! We've got it all going on. That's when it's super exciting.
And now you have your own YouTube channel, right? But you also do Smith and Sniff, which I see lots of people mention here in the comments, because this is starting to sound like Smith and Sniff, just sort of a random conversation about things. But you do both of those channels, don't you?
Yeah. Smith and Sniff was like a YouTube channel born out of a hobby with me and Richard Porter, who better known as the script editor of Grand Tour and was Top Gear. And we've always got on really well. We've been friends for quite a while now, and we hope that Smith and Sniff will just kind of slowly but surely gain a bit of notoriety. It's just a different way of reviewing a car and getting massively sidetracked in the process. That's usually what it entails.
What I find is it's the conversations you have with someone on an international press trip. When you're driving around the countryside for 400 kilometers in some random car, and you have some wild conversations with a half stranger that you only kind of half know. It's like watching that. I like the vibe of Smith and Sniff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, we've just launched the podcast for it as well, because we've got lots of people saying, I like it, but I can't watch it, but I'd like to listen to it while I drive to work or whatever. So we're doing podcasty ones now as well. Yeah,
this Sunday service comes out as a podcast, which I find actually gets nearly as many downloads as the live viewers. They just can't ask questions. People like to just sit back and just listen for 2 hours. I don't know why.
Yeah, do it. I mean, we're not exactly oil painting, so just listen to us. Why not?
It's much easier, yeah. Listen, tell us where everybody can find you, and we'll wrap it up so everybody can go and get a cup of tea.
Okay. So Carpervert's YouTube channel is youtube.com/Carpervert. I'm on Instagram as Jonny Carpervert. I'm on Twitter as at Carpervert, and Smith and Sniff is on YouTube as Smith and Sniff, and Rich Porter is Sniff Petrol on Twitter and stuff like that, and on Instagram. So go and have a look at those places, and if I work on any other TV or other video projects, you'll find out about it through my social media most likely. So go and do that, please.
Yeah, go and subscribe to absolutely everybody that's out there. You've been very good to join us today, Jonny Smith. Thank you very much. I know it's been a long 2 hours, a long time, it feels long, doesn't it? But actually, it's over all of a sudden.
I've enjoyed it. I'm a bit thirsty, but that's a small problem. It's no.
That's an old man problem. I find I need to go to the toilet by the end of the Sunday service. I need to lie down for a bit.
Yes, I've really enjoyed it, Bob, and I would like to see you soon, and I will come over to Ireland as soon as I'm bloody allowed.
We will hold you to that. You know that, don't you? I'm going to get that message every single week now for the next 6 or 7 months. When is Jonny coming to Ireland? I'm
going to collect together all of the things I need to do in Ireland, so I'll do like a mini tour when I'm out there.
And I'll bring a Nissan Tida. I'll find a field and we'll have a race.
Do it. Bring a Tida. Bring a Tida.
Jonny, thank you very much for joining us. Everybody, thank you all for joining us today. You've been very good to stick around for the whole 2 hours. Hopefully we will have more guests anywhere near the caliber. Jonny, won't happen, I'm sure, but we'll have more guests over the next couple of weeks. So hit the subscribe button on my channel, on Jonny's channel, on Smith and Sniff out there as well. You can follow us on all the usual sort of things. Thank you very much. And until the next time, I will see you on the far side. Thanks, Jonny.
Thank you, Bob.